So you'll see that your mic's muted and your video's off, but you can communicate via the chat throughout the session. Welcome to Are You the Concrete Ceiling or the Hand Up? As always, I want to say a big thank you on behalf of my social enterprise, Rocking Your Teens. Your donations will go towards increasing resilience, inspiring and raising aspirations in teens. And if you want to find out more about Rocking Your Teens, you can go to www.rockingyourteens.com. And at some point, my colleague Fiona will add the URL into the chat. Our next event is actually a boys' conference happening in November. So if you have any teenage boys in your life, do look it up or do recommend it to their school, because it will be an event to inspire them, introduce them to careers that are out there, and also help them think about their mental health and well-being. My name is Jenny Garrett. I'm an award-winning career coach, author, and leadership trainer. And my books explore the empowerment of working women and women in leadership roles. However, I've just finished another book, which will be out early next year, on equality versus equity in the workplace. Together with my team, we use our years of experience in coaching and leadership to support women and those from ethnically diverse backgrounds to progress at work, as well as supporting majority group leaders to make inclusion happen. So as the day-to-day key contact for their team, line managers play a crucial role in supporting and developing their team members. But are you truly valuing all of the talent in your teams? Are your direct reports thriving because of you or surviving in spite of you? Do your daily actions champion your staff, seek out opportunities for them to stretch and develop their knowledge and skills and actually help them grow? What more could you do to support your staff from ethnically diverse backgrounds to be their most productive and also unlock their potential and benefit everyone who you lead? That is what today's session is about. So you might be curious, what do I mean by the concrete ceiling and what's the significance of it? You might have heard of the glass ceiling, which we often talk about women hitting a glass ceiling. And a glass ceiling you can crack, can't you? And it can break. But a concrete ceiling is almost impenetrable. And colleagues from ethnically diverse backgrounds can feel that they're hitting that concrete ceiling. They're not being tapped on the shoulder for those promotions and those stretch opportunities. Perhaps they're always coming a close second in those promotions or those interviews. Maybe they're being actively dissuaded from actually going for roles and thinking about themselves as someone who can have ambition and work up the ranks and not being given those opportunities. Ultimately being pigeonholed, being stuck, and not being able to move forward and realize their potential. So are you being the person who is that concrete ceiling for them? Or are you being the person who gives them a hand up and helps them recognize their potential? That's what we're talking about today. And our panel of executive coaches, all listed in the diverse executive coach directory, Claudia, Carol, Hira, and Ishreen, will share tips for you as line managers to help you become more aware of your blind spots and actually take action to be that hand up. And you can find out more about Hira and Claudia and Carol and Ishreen in our diverse coach directory. Fiona will post a link to it in the chat. It's the only directory in the UK that lists just coaches from ethnically diverse backgrounds. But it's more than that. These coaches are at the top of their game. They're fully qualified and they're making a difference in organizations. And I vouch for every single one of them. So how will it run today? Claudia, Hira, Carol, and Ishreen will briefly introduce themselves. I'll ask them a few questions and then we'll open it up to you for questions and reflections. But while we go through the session, please feel free to be adding your questions at any time in the chat and also adding your insights, your reflections to make this a full conversation. The hashtag for this event is diverse talent. And Fiona will post the socials, particularly the Twitter socials, in the chat, but you can find everyone in LinkedIn also. So we're going to start with a very quick poll, just to know where you are at. And I've just launched it. What are you looking for from today's session? Are you looking for ideas on how to be better at supporting colleagues from ethnically diverse backgrounds? Are you looking to take bold action to unlock the potential in all of your staff? Or are you curious to work out if you maybe have been the concrete ceiling or the hand up? So give you a couple of minutes, well, probably a minute, to put your answers here in the poll. So far, only half of you have said, so want more of you. It'd be great to get to at least 80%. Few more. Let's give you a few more seconds. If for some reason you can't see the poll, because I know that sometimes when you're joining from your phone, it's difficult, feel free just to type in the chat what your response is. That's also fine too. Okay, I'm going to share the results. So hopefully you can see that. 60% of you are looking for ideas on how to be better at supporting colleagues from ethnically diverse backgrounds. So we'll make sure we share some ideas today. And 40% of you are looking to take bold action to unlock the potential in all of your staff. I love that. So definitely we'll be able to help you. Great to see what you're looking for from today's session. So without further ado, let's get some introductions started. And I'm going to start with you, Claudia. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes?
Loud and clear.
I'm an award-winning mentor, CEO and founder of Winning Pathways Coaching. And I specialize in executive and career coaching for women who are mainly, but not exclusively, social workers. I'm also the author of Ordinary Women Doing Extraordinary Things and Undeterred, the Success Equation of Women of Black and Asian Heritage, that came out in January this year. I've been actively involved in the anti-racist movement for more than 25 years. And until recently, I led the Race Equality Allies group of the Women's Equality Party. And something interesting you might want to know about me, that I used to be a stand-up comedian on the London open mic scene, but I gave it up when people kept laughing at me. So that's me.
Fantastic, Claudia. Love that. And Hira.
Wow, I can hardly match that, Claudia. That was an amazing profile. Mine is not that exciting, but I'm an executive career coach. I'm a leadership trainer, also an author of 2 books, and I like to call them popular books. The name of the books is Her Allies and Her Way to the Top. I specialize in allyship programs, women leadership, and ethnic leadership development programs. And I've started now owning the title of being an activist because I write and speak a lot about things that I care about, particularly sexism, racism, and Islamophobia.
Fantastic. I think actually, as we do these introductions, it would be great if you put your books in the chat, Claudia, Hira, Carol, Shreen, or any pertinent articles that you think would be really helpful to the audience as well. Lovely. So we'll go to Carol next.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Carol Stewart. I'm the founder of Abounding Solutions and author of Quietly Visible, Leading with Influence and Impact as an Introverted Woman. I'm an executive career and leadership coach, speaker, trainer, and author. And I specialize in coaching introverted women who are senior leaders. And I coach them to lead with confidence, influence, and impact. And I also provide a range of leadership development, career development, personal development, workshops, training, talks, webinars. And I'm a LinkedIn top voice 5 times here in the UK, including the 2022 top voice for gender equity. And I'm also the co-founder of Black Northern Women, which was set up because of a lack of empowerment events for Black women in the north of England. And we held an annual International Women's Day conference. And this year we had 22 women from 22 cities attending.
Wow, goodness, there's just so much goodness coming out of all of you, isn't there? There's so much talent. Last but definitely not least, Ishreen.
Thank you, Jenny. Hello, everyone. I'm Ishreen Bradley. I'm also an award-winning coach, advisor, and author. My book, Authentic You, has been recognized as one of the most useful contributions to the gender conversation. I focus primarily on gender, age, and ethnicity. My passion in life is that everybody gets a fair crack at work. And that has led me to set up Belonging Pioneers, where we advise organizations on how to build inclusive cultures. We work with them to develop their diverse leaders. We support them in building balanced boards. And we obviously provide 101 training so that everybody has a foundational understanding of what it is to be someone who's inclusive and welcoming of people who are different from them. And I'm really passionate about what I do, as is everybody on this panel, and really pleased to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So let's get straight to it now. I've got my first question for you. Why should those who are here consider how they manage their staff from ethnically diverse backgrounds? After all, if you manage all of your staff well, shouldn't that be enough? Why do we have to think about ethnically diverse staff in particular? So I'm going to start with you, Claudia. What do you think?
Well, best practice in staff management actually starts with the organisation reflecting equity, diversity and inclusion, and that includes anti-racism, and reflects those things in its core values, policies, procedures and everyday practices. And it starts also with normalising conversations about race and racism within teams and throughout the organisation. Now, this might not be easy for many white people, but as Greenberg and Greenlee in their book, The Business of Race, say, you can't solve what you don't discuss. So I just want to create that context. So would you agree that managers can't be effective unless they're managing all their staff well? Because that's how you maximize the potential of your team, and that's how you gain benefits for the organization. And to get the best from individual team members from global majority communities, and I'm talking about Black, Asian, people who are not white, basically, line managers need to have conversations with their teams about race and racism, and conversations with team members from global majority communities about their experiences, both within and outside the workplace. And now, this is about being inclusive. It helps to gain understanding of the impact of experiences of microaggression, discrimination, how that impacts on individual performance, and what support each individual needs at work and in relation to their career development and progression. And that some team members might be unwilling to share those experiences because, after all, trust is key and it has to be earned. But this may be the place to start, just demonstrating that you value what they bring to the table and that you can be trusted to listen, understand, and change your own behaviour if necessary. But if you, the line manager, fail to initiate these conversations and earn that trust, you may squander and at worst lose talented team members. When researchers found that diverse, well-led and inclusive teams outperform homogenous teams, organisations really can't afford to lose talented staff from global majority communities.
Wonderful. Gosh, what a comprehensive answer there. I think the things that are standing out for me particularly are around trust, building that trust, but also that that quote you said, you can't solve what you can't discuss. And I think that, that's really interesting. Hira, what would you like to add?
I think Claudia has mentioned all the points, but I would say, what exactly is the definition of managing them well? I mean, you think you're managing them well, but is that the perception they share as well? Because a lot of diverse talent, diverse employees they suffer from internal barriers like imposter syndrome and fear of failure, fear of vulnerability. So they're often very hesitant about sharing grievances. So they won't really say that they're not happy because they will fear that they will be subject to further racism or xenophobia, whatever it is that they experience at work. And because of that, they probably wouldn't say anything. And you might assume as a manager that everything is fine, everything is really good because nobody's saying anything. So I think it's very important to capture the responses, do anonymous surveys, find out what they are thinking. And I know I shouldn't be saying this. I usually tell people this when I am coaching my clients, that you're not their parents. You have to remember this. But an example would be, as a parent, when you have different children, we have 3 or 4 children, you love all of them equally, but each one of them would require different resources in terms of your attention, in terms of what they want from you. And it's you cannot really treat them equally. I mean, you want to treat them equally, but obviously there's going to be a difference in what is going to be best for them. So you're going to do whatever is best for each child. Some child might need a support in something else, some child might need support in something else, and that is going to differ. In the same way, in the team, you have to make sure that that all team members belonging to different marginalized groups might need different sorts of support, which you cannot generalize, which you cannot stereotype or assume. So it's always better to ask and find out if they are really happy, or is it just, you thinking that they're happy and everything is going well.
Such a good point, isn't it? Just because someone doesn't say something doesn't mean something isn't wrong. And that example of the children, I think, is so helpful to really make those connections. So thank you, Hira. Ishreen.
Yeah, I want to build on what Hira said, actually, which is around really understanding difference. So, the question says, if you manage all your staff well, should that be enough? The question is, what does managing all your staff well look like when they don't fit into what you already know? We're brought up, and we're the 5 of us here, we're diverse. We don't fit into the majority group in this country or in our workplaces, but we've to an extent trained ourselves to be able to work in organizations that are very different from us. Some people in your workplace will have done that, so you can more easily understand their behaviors. Some people won't have. Maybe they came over in their 20s or 30s and they already had gone through that basic development of norming into the society they were in. They're going to be very different from the people that you're used to working with, the people that you grew up learning how to work effectively with, and hence who you know how to manage well. Right? So that's I think the fundamental aspect of anybody who's different. People who are ethnically different have been through, in some cases, experiences that are quite traumatic, that are quite triggering. And so they've learned to shut themselves down in order to protect themselves. So often, even if you ask them, they won't tell you what they're dealing with. Often, if you're like we do this, we give Black and brown people the option of whether they join in to a general training on race, right? And why we do that is some of the content that people who are not from those backgrounds need to understand can be quite triggering and traumatic for people who've been through those experiences. And so, there are people, Black and brown people, who choose to come and say, no, I want to know what's been told. And there are people who are just so traumatized that they're like, do you know what? No, I know what I need to do to survive in this environment. I would rather not join that workshop. Right? And if you translate that back to your workplace, you might be wondering why people don't communicate. Why don't they say it? Why, when something happens that they don't like, why do they shut down? So that's why. Because they had those really difficult experiences. So how do you as a leader deal with that? I think the first thing is you understand the difference between equity and equality, right? And Jenny, congratulations on the book. That's going to be
Thank
really
you.
material, right? But the difference between equity and equality in summary is that, you know, if we're a meritocracy, we're committed to equality, we're assuming everybody's at the same point at the starting line of the race that's called our career, our work, our success. The thing is, research has shown that if you don't belong to that mainstream group, then you're not going to be at the starting line. So if you're not from the majority gender, you're going to be 10 paces behind. If you're not from the majority race, you're going to be 10 paces behind. If you're a single mother or a single parent, you're going to be 10 paces behind. So what equity is about is really understanding what your team member has had to deal with and where they are on that track before the starting line. And often, people kind of say, "Oh, I don't want to be treated differently," right? So sometimes people from ethnic minorities will say, "Do you know, I don't want any special treatment. I don't want to be treated differently," and they might not understand that actually they're not at the starting line. So you've got to account for that as well with empathy and compassion. Yeah.
Some great points there. Thank you. And just adding to what you said there, there's there's something about if you're treating everyone well, but some people are not succeeding, that's kind of an indication that something's not right, isn't it? I'm doing a great job as a leader, but why is this group never progressing, never shining? What's missing there? And I think that can be an indication as a line manager leader that actually there does need to be some thinking about things differently and giving people what they need, as you've all been talking about. So Carol, some thoughts from you.
Yeah, and so kind of building on from what Ishreen said, it's because not all of your team members start from the same place of advantage, and there's many factors that can build into this disadvantage. It could be structural issues such as systemic racism, it could be lived experience, different factors that put them at a disadvantage. And those who are in the disadvantage, it can negatively affect the way that they think and what they believe about themselves. And research suggests that those who are in the minority group are more likely to experience imposter syndrome than those who are not. So straight away, your ethnically diverse team members are at a place of disadvantage, and there's growing evidence that shows that this is the case. We had the Parker review that in 2016 that found that only 85 of the 1,050 FTSE 100 director positions were held by people from ethnic minority backgrounds, or the global majority, as I like to call it. The CIPD, they did a report looking at how to address barriers, and they found that 20% of employees from ethnic minority backgrounds are more likely to say that discrimination contributed to their failure in achieving their career expectations, compared to 11% from a white British background. And I could go on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Carol. So I can see the time zooming away, and we've only answered one question so far. So I want to make sure that anyone in the audience, if you have a question, that we make sure we get to it. So if you do have any questions, please do put them in the chat, and we'll take them, just so we don't miss out on what it is you want to ask as well. So I'm going to go to the another question. So what do managers accidentally do that can diminish their talent from ethnically diverse backgrounds, that might diminish their productivity, their morale, their ambition? So, I know that managers will be doing their very best. They'll be thinking, I want to get the best from my team, the best from my people. But what do they do sometimes that might actually give the opposite effect and not deliver what they're hoping for? I'll start with you, Ishreen.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. So There are a couple of points I want to make about this. One, I'm sure many of us will be familiar with from leadership training that we've had, which is that very often we focus on what we say, the language, the words, and we don't think about our tone or our body language and our physiology. And what's really important, I think, for people from the global majority is to feel accepted and acknowledged. And now when you're in a stressful job in a difficult position and somebody does something that's not in the norm, that you don't expect, that, you know, and you react, right? And that reaction is going to have a bigger impact on them than it would from somebody who's grown up in this culture and is from the majority group. So just really being aware of that. So sometimes people aren't, and that can cause a huge amount of trauma and shutdown and reduce engagement. The other is your micro behaviors, so specifically your microaggressions. So these are like the little things that you do that you may not even be aware of. In a general social situation, that might be like saying, where are you from? Right? So where are you from? Is a conversation we normally have when we're trying to build a connection with somebody. But for somebody who's from an ethnically diverse background, that can be quite traumatic. Why? Because it causes uncertainty. So I'm going to give you an example from my experience, right? So I was in a business meeting and somebody asked me where I'm from. And I was wondering, okay, so are they asking me which school I went to, whether I'm from London or whether I'm from Sri Lanka? And like, what are they exactly asking me? And so I told them, well, actually, I was born in Sri Lanka, but I've spent most of my life in London. And he said, well, actually, no, I was just wondering which company you work for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Can you imagine the amount of conversations in my head before I could actually even speak?
Yes, yeah. I think there's another layer on that, isn't there, as well, which is sometimes you tell someone where you're from and it's not the answer they want as well. So I could say, yes, I'm from Hemel Hempstead in Hertfordshire. And it's like, no, where are you from? Well, I used to live in London. And ultimately, they're really asking me, what's my heritage, you know, from the Caribbean, you know, that sort of thing. So there's also that sometimes people don't accept where you say you're from. And that can feel like a bit of an affront, because wherever someone tells me they're from, I accept, you know, no matter what they look like. So yeah, great point. Thank you. But I go to Carol next.
Gives away often, where are you really from?
Yeah.
So I would say a lack of awareness of how their biases are unfairly disadvantaging their team members and unfairly advantaging others. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So prior to starting my coaching business 10 years ago, I worked in an organization and I'd climbed from a very junior role to a senior leader. And before I got to a senior leader, when I was a team leader, the head of department would give my two male colleagues opportunities to deputise in her absence, but not me. That I never got it, and it became quite frustrating. And I was wondering, is it because I'm black, which is something that goes through your mind, but you don't have no evidence to support that. But I decided to address it with her, and I said to her that you know, that they always get the opportunity, I don't, and you know, I want to progress as well in my career. And she hadn't realized the implications of what she was doing and how I was perceiving that as well. So she made amends and she then gave me opportunities to, but prior to that, she wasn't thinking about me going up in that way. Another example is a client who is a black woman in a middle management position, and this younger white male joined at the same level of her, and he was given an opportunity to progress, whereas she wasn't. He didn't have the length of experience, he didn't have the knowledge that she had. So that's, people have looked at her, or looked at this person and thought, yeah, he's good for the next level up, and helped him to get there, and overlooked her. So that's just a couple of examples of how it can play out practically.
Thank you so much. And I think that those listening, it will be resonating, and they'll be maybe questioning and checking themselves at this point. Someone said these are such important discussions, gets me thinking about how we can translate these into real change and action. And we're going to share some tips a little later. So hold out for those, Sarah. I'll go to Hira next.
Right. So I think one of the microaggressions typically, which Ishreen's talking about, and also Carol, is mispronunciation of names. I think that is so important. It's something so small, but we've all coached and trained so many people who've had to shorten their name just because, you know, it's difficult to pronounce, and managers feel comfortable calling their nicknames instead of the full name. So I think it's a very small thing. But other than that, I'm going to make two contradictory statements, actually. So one is that as a manager, you need to be an ally. But as an ally, it's important to know that these people from ethnically diverse backgrounds do not need to be rescued. They do not need you to be knights in shining armor who's going to come and whisk them away on the horse. They just need a hand up. They need a little push, but they do not need to be rescued. So I think that is an important consideration. And then when we are talking about sponsoring diverse employees, and we talk about, you know, talking them up, giving them opportunities, that's all very good. But there's no point in giving them opportunities and sponsoring them when you're not there to support them. So then it's going to be a benign sabotage for them, because they will be given opportunities, but then they wouldn't know what to do with these opportunities, because as you know, Claudia and Carol and Ishreen have already mentioned that many of us do not have the same starting line. We don't have access to the same resources. So we are anyways, when we are starting, we are far behind. And if we do get the opportunities, we wouldn't know what to do with this. So I think if you are giving them opportunities, if you are sponsoring them, make sure you're there to support them. Another thing is that a lot of people, managers, and this is particularly when I was doing research for my book on her allies, I found out that managers engage in protective hesitation. So they do not give fair performance appraisals. By fair, I mean they're actually quite afraid to offend people from diverse backgrounds, and particularly also women and women of color. So sometimes they hold back. And this is very crucial information, which is going to help these ethnic diverse employees from really progressing and going up the ladder. So I think it's very important. And sometimes ethnically diverse staff are penalized for not looking like leaders. Just because they don't look like leaders, that it impacts their chances to progress. So I think it's important to give them solid developmental, insightful feedback, which is going to help them progress. And of course, the final thing is that's my favorite thing, not to make assumptions. People from Black and Brown and different marginalized groups have their own unique identities, and they have their own unique challenges. So clustering everybody and thinking that, oh, this just because they're Black and they're brown, they have the same challenges, let's give them one-size-fits-all solutions, that's not going to help. So I think it's important to identify unique identities and look at issues from an intersectional lens, which is, as you know, Jenny, our favorite topic, that, look at all, the way in which you can support employees, particularly from an intersectional lens.
Thank you so much. I want to say, if we've used any language today that's unfamiliar and you need us to explain or unpack, please just type it in the chat, because we're so used to using lots of language that might not be familiar. I think it's really helpful just to let us know if we're doing any of that. But also here, I just wanted to pick up on your point about names. And I love, someone said to me once, if everyone can pronounce Tchaikovsky, they can pronounce any name, because that's really difficult, and everyone around the world can pronounce that. So there's no name that a line manager or anyone in an organization shouldn't be able to pronounce. It just requires you to practice, to think about it, to look at it phonetically. So I think it's such a good point. Why can't we pronounce names that are not Western or whatever they are? Claudia, definitely, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
I'm going to be very quick because I know that the time is getting on. I was going to talk about how people unconsciously assume that treating everyone the same is fair. But I've just, something came into my head about, I'm not going to talk about that because we've touched on it. Basically, I think one of the things that happened a lot certainly with Black people, is that we get mistaken for other Black people.
Mm.
Even when we don't look like, you're in an organisation, there's probably only two of you as Black people, and we get mixed up. So I think please be very careful. You're going to have to look at us properly because it's not very good for morale. I was coaching someone who had this happening to her really quite often, and the effect on her morale was just extraordinary. We want to be seen as individuals. We don't all look the same. Just, really look at us and think about who we are and get our names right too. So
absolutely, such a good point, such a good point. And something, it's like one of those diminishes, something that you don't realize will really impact someone. Are you actually talking to me? Because you've got the wrong name, you don't know if I'm the other person. Are you talking to me or are you talking to them? Are you, if you're giving me, even if you're saying well done, are you saying well done to me, or did you mean to say it's the other Black woman? So that sort of thing can be really quite harmful. So yeah, and this is my kind of final kind of question, really. So please do be putting any questions in the chat. When managers are the hand up rather than the concrete ceiling, what is the advantage for them? And I'm going to actually start with Carol this time. So yeah, when managers are the hand up rather than the concrete ceiling, what is the advantage for them, do you think, Carol?
So for the manager, that it's you'll have higher employee engagement because all of your staff will be engaged, and when they're engaged, they will be more productive, they will perform better, they will be more motivated, you'll get better outcomes, you'll be happier, they'll be happier, the organization will be happier. So it's a win-win situation overall, and they will be getting stretched developmental opportunities. And it will also reflect on you as being a good leader, and you'll get higher appraisals, maybe bonuses, etc.
Sounds great. Sign me up. I'll go to you next, Hira.
So I would say, I think if you are a manager who gets along well with team members and all your team members, irrespective of the background, doing well, you have a sustainable collaborative advantage, whereas people want to work with you. You are a great catch for organizations, and also team members would like to work with you because you get along well with lots of people. It's good for your mental health if everybody's getting along well in your team, if they're doing well. As a manager, you feel very proud. And you feel very good about it. So I think that's the benefit. And in the end, I would just say, I just added this example yesterday, that when you are making an authentic recipe, every ingredient, especially people from Black and Asian backgrounds would know this, that, we are very fond of our cuisines, right? So when you're making an authentic recipe, each ingredient has, unique flavors. And even if you miss one of them, that's going to change the taste of the dish. So if you want all your team members to do well, if you want a really good masterpiece, imagine that organization success is like a recipe that you want to cook. Every team member is adding flavor to that recipe. So I think in the end, when all the ingredients are added perfectly, then you get a great recipe. So I would say it's good. Overall.
Love that metaphor. If anybody quotes it, we've got to give it to Hira. Don't forget to add her name, because I think that will be quoted everywhere. Love that. Claudia.
Yes, I'm just going to build on what's already been said. So you get more efficiency. There's less waste. You can get the greatest benefit from the resources you have available. Less wastage of time, money, and material. And also, you spend less time and money on recruiting new staff because people will leave when they're not happy. There's also fewer grievances, fewer internal disputes. I mean, it's just, the benefits are immense, really.
Yeah, completely. And Ishreen, what would you like to add?
Yeah, so fundamentally, your life is easier, right? You have a happy team. You don't have as much conflict. But I don't know how it is in your organization, but with most of the clients that I'm working with, the biggest headache is that people are leaving. It's impossible to recruit. There's a shortage of staff talent, and so you want to hold on to the people you have and support them in being the best they can be. And if you are giving them a hand up, what you'll find is, especially with Black and brown people, is that they're incredibly loyal. So if you do something good for them, they're going to be loyal to you. And there's data to support this. There's loyalty to the organization. They'll work harder, they'll stay longer, and you'll be able to, you reduce your headache of having to recruit another person in a really small pond of talent, and you'll build what I would say is a true meritocracy. You know, we talk about organizations being a meritocracy, but you'll have a focus on potential in your team members, and you'll be able to build what is a true meritocracy based on their potential, and they're delivering on their potential into performance rather than just focusing on where they're performing right now.
Jenny, could I throw one other thing
Please
in?
do, please do.
Yeah. Just a figure. I love figures. No, people don't enjoy working with ineffective managers. You don't, I don't. From the experience I've had as a manager, I definitely know that to be a fact. And there's one survey that found that, I can't remember where it came from, but it found that 33% of staff would sacrifice a salary increase in return for a new and effective manager. I mean, that speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, how important that is. And it's a funny thing. I was thinking about it this morning about, for some reason, poor managers I've had. And yeah, they can, absolutely make you want to leave an organization, stop you giving the extra 5% that you might do. And so it's a really powerful position in terms of people might want to get away from you, but also on the legacy you can leave. I remember the amazing managers I've had and the difference they've made in my life in terms of unlocking my potential, making me see that I could go beyond what I thought I could, pushing me out of my comfort zone, giving me opportunities. So it's both of those, isn't it? Again, you know, people being that concrete ceiling or being that hand up. So I think there've been lots of tips in our conversation, but just going back to Sarah's point, because she made an important one. These are important discussions, but translating this into real change and action. Do you have any other sort of top tips or thoughts about one small thing that a manager could do that would just help them be more of that hand up in the workplace? And so just maybe put a hand up when you want to say something, so I know who might want to share first. Carol.
Yes, so what I would do is get to know your individual team members on a one-to-one basis. So don't just look at them generically, and then find out from them, well, what is it that they need, or how can you support them in order to progress to wherever it is that they want to progress, in order for them to develop. By having these conversations, you will find out what it is that they need and create a safe space where they feel that they can open up to you and they can talk to you, because as has been mentioned earlier, some of them may have had traumatic experiences, or there may even be experiences which they're not even aware of have shaped how they feel and what they believe about themselves. So by creating that safe space where they feel that they can open up to you and then find out, well, what do they need?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, that getting to know people as individuals. That affinity bias exists, which is I'm going to go more towards the person who looks like me, has the same hobbies, loves the same movies, likes the same sports, and inadvertently I kind of show a form of favoritism, spend more time with that person, and then they end up advancing. So it's kind of going against your natural inclination, which might be just to go towards a certain group, and thinking, actually, I'm going to dedicate time specifically to those I might not go towards so naturally. So yeah, fantastic point, Carol. And Ishreen.
So I'm going to give you two tips. One is become really good at spotting potential rather than looking at how someone's performing. The other is start to practice what we're calling micro affirmations. So this is spotting the little things that they're doing well and acknowledging them for it. And you'll find, especially with Black and brown people, that goes a really long way. You just need to say a little thing that they've done well, a little thing that you believe they can do really well. And you'll find like a tenfold increase in performance and happiness.
Lovely, love that. And adding the genuineness into that as well. So I know it goes without saying, but yeah, not those sort of fake, oh yeah, you're great, but actually you did this thing and that made a difference. And I appreciate it. So yeah, absolutely, Ishreen.
And really specific.
Yes, yeah, the specificity. Yeah, love that. Who would like to share next?
I would, if I could add, I would say, like Ishreen said, catch them doing the right things and reinforce that, because that can really build the morale. And also, don't be afraid to ask the right questions. You are not expected to know everything about everybody's backgrounds and ethnicities and traditions they follow, but rather than making assumptions, ask respectful questions, which of course do not invade their privacy in respectful ways, but also give them space, because like the rest of the people also pointed out, sometimes, Black and brown people, they can tend to be a little reserved, and they can tend to be a little skeptical because of their lived experiences. So they might not open up immediately. So give them a little space, but do not be afraid to ask them what is it that they want. And I'm always a huge fan of surveys. So do anonymous surveys and capture the feedback and find out how they're doing. So I think that's going to give an insight into how they're doing, what they want.
Thank you so much. And we've got a message from Donal here. Hi, Donal. It's been a long time. Hope you're well. So managers complete race readiness program, complete the anti-racist style indicator as part of becoming an anti-racist organization. Need to get beyond individual, however helpful gestures. So beyond that, change the culture is what Donal's referring to. And I would add, develop your racial fluency, your ability to talk about race and ethnicity, to feel more comfortable and confident having conversations in that space will help you too. Because going back to the point that was made by Claudia, if you haven't got the language for it, you can't solve it. Claudia, your thoughts?
Just one very quick one, and that too, you talked about developed racial fluency, if you're able to talk about it, start by talking about it in your team. Somebody gave me really good exercise that she did with her team that really opened things up, and you can use it as well. Basically, asking your team members to bring something to one of your team meetings that represent them and their culture, and then get them each to talk about it. That opens up so much, things that you probably didn't know about those individuals. And that can be a good starter for having those regular, but what you might find uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely way in, isn't it? And a safe way in for everyone. And those who haven't even thought about their culture before, gives them an opportunity to search a bit, doesn't it? And think about what they want to add to that. Lovely. Thank you so much for your questions, everyone, and your thoughts. And we've got a wealth of resources that I can see being that have been shared in the chat that come from all of our coaches here as well. So I have a final question for you, and it's, we are all coaches, and coaches love asking difficult questions, but in service of helping you move forward, not just for the sake of asking difficult questions. So what's the big coaching question that anyone who wants to start thinking about how they can be the hand up for their staff from ethnically diverse backgrounds should be asking themselves? What's that big coaching question that those watching today can start to ask themselves to help them move forward? And I'm going to start with you, Claudia.
I've got two tacked onto one.
Okay.
So, first part is what steps will I take to ensure that I bring out the best in my Black and Asian team members as well as my white team members? And what's my first step?
Lovely, lovely. Can you repeat that just in case anyone's...
What steps will I take to ensure that I bring out the best in my Black and Asian team members as well as my white team members? And what's my first step?
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. Ishreen, what's your question?
I've also got two. We're being greedy today. So the first one is, what potential does this person have to develop and grow and contribute to the business? And how can I support them in realizing that potential? What concrete steps can I take? The second question is, what can I authentically acknowledge them for that'll empower them and increase their confidence and self-belief so that they grow?
Wonderful. Yeah, such empowering questions. Hira.
So because we're so used to seeing things in a certain way, in a certain direction, I think it takes a lot of self-reflection to challenge ourselves and challenge others. So my question would be, what am I not seeing? What am I missing? Or what am I not doing in terms of challenging myself, challenging others, and challenging the organization culture?
Fantastic. Thank you. And Carol.
And I'm going to be greedy as well, because I've got two questions. And the first part of my response, then it requires you having a conversation with the individuals. And so the question is, what do all, and I emphasize that all, my team members need to help them to be the best version of themselves and maximize their potential? The second question is, what can I do to support them and create opportunities for this to happen?
Fantastic. I think that will take the whole of August to be reflecting on those questions, but I think the answers will take you a great deal forward in terms of being that hand up to all of your staff, and not just thinking about leveling the playing field, but getting equity of outcomes so that all of your staff can achieve, can be ambitious, can step up the ladder if that's what they're looking for, and also be the most productive and happy in their work that they can be. So many wonderful insights from our coaches today. I want to say a huge thank you for you sharing your knowledge, your expertise, your wisdom and your insights, as well as your lived experience in the session. Thank you so much, Claudia. Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you so much, Ishreen. And thank you so much, Hira. You can find them all in the Diverse Executive Coach directory. You can get straight in touch with them, ask them about their programs, their services, and of course their one-to-one coaching. They really are transformative in the approaches they take, and they really are the top coaches in this country from ethnically diverse backgrounds. So grab them. They probably all have waiting lists right now, but try and grab them while you can. And to find more about the work I do, you can go to jennygarrett.global. So our next event is on Thursday, the 29th of September. We're taking a little break for August, having a summer holiday. It will be at lunchtime again. And it's about confidence this time. So do you want to develop your confidence? How can a coach help you? So if you are thinking, yeah, I could do a bit more work to develop my confidence, or if you have staff, colleagues, friends, associates, you think, actually, that's something that keeps coming up, they want to develop their confidence, I really encourage you to come to this session. Confidence is something that coaches are really excellent in helping people develop and nurture and find within themselves. So, and we expect this to be a really popular session. So thank you for attending today. I've said thank you to our coaches. I also want to say a huge thank you to my colleague Fiona, who's been managing the chat and the event. And also because it's her final event for us, she's going on to Pastures New. So I want to say a heartfelt thank you for all of her support as well. Have a lovely summer break, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you in September. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Just turning off. Oh, okay. I was going to take a picture of us all, but Hira's gone.
Yeah, Hira's gone, hasn't
she?
That's fine. I'll take it from the video. Thank you all so much. Lovely to see you. And thank you, Fiona. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Fiona, for all your support over the past year, 2 years, I can't remember how long it is. You know, you just seem so very well organized and got it all together. So I wish you every success on your journey.
Oh, thank you, Carol. That's very kind. It's been great working with you all. I'll miss you a lot.
No.
Good luck, Fiona. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye now. Bye.